Hi, and welcome to Gadget News and Review. We are home to some of the coolest gadgets, and the best consumer reviews online, buyer's guides and features. If you like our review, please subscribe for more upcoming reviews videos. Motorola One Action Review. Motorola calls action on an affordable Android One phone. We've grown accustomed to the Moto G family dominating the budget smartphone market by now. But more recently, Motorola has introduced an intriguing second strain of classy but affordable handsets in the form of the Motorola One family. Earlier this year, the Motorola One Vision allied advanced camera features to an attractive, elongated design and a pure version of Android 9 Pie. The results were rather impressive. Now the Motorola One Action is here with a broadly similar offering at a slightly lower price. This time, though, it's more concerned with improving your videos than your everyday snaps. The Motorola One Action is available to buy in the UK and other parts of Europe right now. You'll find it on sale from a variety of UK retailers, including Argos, John Lewis and Amazon at £219, about $265, 390 Australian dollars. That's £50 cheaper than the Motorola One Vision, and around the same price as the Moto G7. Over in the US, the Motorola One Action won't be available until October, while availability in Australia is yet to be confirmed. Just like the Motorola One Vision before it, the Motorola One Action packs its two headline features into its name. The first is the baseline feature for this entire family of devices, Android One. Google's purebred strain of Android 9 Pie features none of the bloat of competing efforts from the likes of Huawei, Xiaomi and Samsung. Everything is crisp-edged and thematically consistent in a way that precious few custom UIs manage to be. The settings menu, the app tray, the app folders and all of the UI elements, all use a single coherent design language originating from the creator of Android itself. That Google-spawned coherence extends to the Motorola One Action's app offering. All the basics are handled by Google's own peerless suite of apps, and there are no duplicates. Gmail handles email, Calendar deals with your schedule, Chrome is your only web browser. This really shouldn't be a standout feature in 2019, but it's crazy how many Android phones still get this fundamental part so wrong. We'll delve more into the UI a little later, but all you need to know for now is that the Motorola One Vision feels as smooth, frictionless and downright classy as any other £200 per $250 smartphone, and a fair few more expensive phones at that. An awful lot of that comes down to Android One. If Android One is the baseline, then the true standout feature of the Motorola One Action lies in the action part of its name. It's rare that we see a new phone doing interesting things with video recording, and rarer still in a budget phone. But that's precisely what's happening here. The Motorola One Action's triple camera rather unusually incorporates a 16MP sensor that's dedicated to video capture. Not only that, but it captures 117-degree footage, all while held in portrait orientation. To be clear, this means that you get ultra-wide 1080p horizontal landscape footage while holding the phone normally. This latter point might not sound like a major change on paper, but in practice it makes filming feel far more secure. Holding your phone horizontally for stills is one thing, you're actively trying to hold still in such situations after all. But filming is a far more active, kinetic affair that can often lead to slips and drops. With this simple 90-degree flip, you can hold onto the phone far more securely while panning or moving. The actual footage captured is very fluid too, with electronic stabilization smoothing out the bumps, and quad-pixel technology using a pixel binning technique to maximize sharpness. The Motorola One Action and the Motorola One Vision aren't just members of the same family, they're practically twins. This is another long, thin device with a front-filling display at a healthy 84% screen-to-body ratio, punctured only by a punch-hole selfie camera. The rear of the device is a glossy plastic fingerprint magnet, with curved edges and a familiar lozenge-shaped camera module. You also get the same rear-mounted fingerprint sensor as the Vision, which neatly contains the Motorola symbol. It's a speedy, reliable example of the form, too. When it comes to comparative dimensions, the Motorola One Action is half a millimeter thicker at 9.15 mm and 4 grams lighter at 176 grams. which really doesn't prove significant in the hand. One interesting design difference between these two phones is that the Motorola One Action is only IPX2 water resistant compared to the One Vision's IP52 rating. You'd think that the phone being targeted at the GoPro brigade would need to be a little more rugged, but the Vision is technically the more dust resistant. Neither of them is going to be able to fend off anything more than a light shower on the liquid resistance front. Thankfully, the Motorola One Action's 6.3-inch display is just as decent as its older brothers. It's a 1080 by 2520 LCD, which allows for ample pixel density and strong peak brightness. Perhaps the standout feature of this screen is its length. With a 21:9 aspect ratio, it's much taller than most phones, making it a little tricky to wield one-handed. It's simply not possible to reach a good portion of the screen with the hand you're holding it in. Still, the quality's the thing here. It's not like it's unusual to find a strong screen at this price point any longer, see the Honor 20 Lite for proof, but the Motorola One Action certainly doesn't let itself down. We weren't at all shocked to find the Motorola One Action packing a 3500 mAh battery given its inherent similarity to the Motorola One Vision. Once again, this is enough to get the phone through a day of usage with a little room to spare. On a busy day, you might be left with 20% in a tank, while a particularly quiet day might leave the battery half full. In practical terms, it's a nightly charger. We were a little disappointed to find that Motorola has made a cut in the recharging department. Where the One Vision came with a 15W turbocharger in the box, the One Action comes with a slower 10W equivalent. Any kind of fast charging is welcome, of course, particularly at this end of the market. But it's one of the areas that explains the £50 price difference. There were no shocks when applying our standard battery test, which is a 90-minute looping video in 720p with the screen brightness cranked up to full. We got identical results to the Motorola One Vision of around 83% left in the tank. That's about the same as the Honor 20 Lite, and is much better than the Moto G7 Plus on 22%. Not outstanding stamina, then, but decent enough. Motorola has dropped the eye-catching 4.8MP camera of the Motorola One Vision in favor of a more normal 1.2MP unit backed by a 5MP depth sensor. That sounds like a pretty average setup, and sure enough, the Motorola One Action takes pretty average stills. But average isn't such a bad result at this end of the market. We found that the camera was capable of capturing adequate shots in strong lighting, albeit with the usual issues with overexposure. Our landscape shots on a particularly sunny day turned out to be somewhat washed out. There's an HDR facility that kicks in automatically in such situations, but it didn't prove infallible in raining in extremely bright areas. Predictably, the results aren't too hot when the lighting drops. It doesn't take much for the noise to creep in and the detail levels to plummet, unfortunately. The reason Motorola didn't go in quite as strongly with its main camera here, is down to the inclusion of that third lens. This 16MP 117-degree sensor is dedicated to video capture, and this is where the Vision's pixel binning technology reappears to improve sharpness. Videos shot with the One Action turned out to be wider than normal and rather well stabilized, electronically rather than optically, which is something that's aided considerably by the ability to hold the camera more firmly in portrait view while still shooting landscape videos. When it came to viewing those videos back, we found that the auto orientation option was turned off by default. It's a little annoying being forced to watch them in a tiny windowed view, but this can be changed easily enough in the settings menu. Around front there's a 12MP camera for all your selfie needs. Whichever camera you use, Motorola's camera app is a neat and tidy affair that provides quick, easy access to all of the main functions. There's precious little menu trawling here, though it's easy enough to flick into full manual control if you so wish. In case we haven't made it abundantly clear by now, we're massive fans of the Android One OS that sits at the heart of the Motorola One Action. This is Google's near-stock version of what is currently Android 9 Pie, with absolutely no manufacturer modifications to its appearance or core functions. Of course, Motorola has never been the worst offender on the OS tinkering front. Quite the opposite, in fact. But what Android One brings is the cast iron guarantee of software updates for at least 2 years, meaning the One Action will definitely get Android 10 and 11. It's also guaranteed to get security upgrades for the next 3 years. In other words, this is as safe a bet as you're going to get in the constantly shifting world of Android smartphones. Assurances aside, this pure take on Android 9 Pie is a pleasure to use. We've already mentioned the delights of a cohesive UI and a being able to rely on Google's stock apps alone. But it also offers an appreciably zippy, stutter-free navigation experience on the One Action. Part of that is down to competent hardware, of course. But Android One deserves its fair share of credit. There are still little flecks of Motorola's own personality in this OS too. You get the signature Moto home screen widget by default, which provides time, date, weather and battery info in one handy circular cluster. We're not 100% sold on Motorola's current gesture implementation though. And given that it's an option that needs to be activated here, it seems neither is Motorola. But it's quite usable if you give it time. With this option activated, tapping the bar at the bottom takes you home. Tapping and swiping left backs up, while tapping and swiping right flicks to the previous opened app. Tapping and swiping up brings up the app switcher, while an extended swipe brings up the app tray. It's possible to opt for the classic 3-button approach or Google's own lighter Android gesture implementation in the settings menu, if either of these suits you better. You also get a few Moto actions, like a reliable shortcut to the camera app by double twisting the handset, or to the torch by double chopping it. Moto Display is here too, giving you control over lock screen notifications and the ability to keep the phone awake while you're looking at it. Less welcome are Motorola's horrible default message and ringtones. But everyone changes those things early on anyway, right? The Motorola One Action's display makes it an interesting device for media playback, but it's not a total success. We're not entirely sure there's enough of a payoff for this somewhat awkward form factor. The vast majority of video content on the internet or from streaming services is shot in a narrower aspect ratio, which means you'll frequently encounter thick black side borders on landscape content. You can pinch to zoom in with a lot of this content, but that tends to lop off large sections of the top and bottom. The amount of content that's shot is steadily on the rise. Netflix reckons that 2/3 of its original movie content is shot in this format, for example. However, we noticed that even home-brewed films like Bird Box took on a slightly lopsided appearance on the One Action, with the video being shunted to the side to try and avoid the punch-hole camera. Sticklers for symmetry should avert their eyes. You might expect gaming content to fill out the horizontal space a little better, and it does, provided you don't opt for that Moto gesture bar control option. Do that and some games, including Guns of Boom and Arena of Valor, will leave an ugly border where the virtual home bar is. While we're on the subject of gaming, the Motorola One Action makes do with a single speaker on the bottom of the device. It's far from ideal, but at least there's a headphone socket. Sticking with the positives, 128GB is plenty of storage for games, video and other media. It's especially good given the One Action's affordable price tag, and you can also add up to 512GB of additional storage via the included micro SD slot. Then there's the simple fact that games run really well on the Motorola One Action. You can thank its decent internal hardware for that. The Motorola One Vision was the first phone to use Samsung's Exynos 9609 chipset, and it's not a great surprise to find that the Motorola One Action follows suit. Ably supported by 4GB of RAM, this is a fine performer at the price. It even earns its Action name by being a capable gaming machine. PUBG Mobile defaults to high HDR settings upon boot up, and proceeds to run very fluidly. Guns of Boom, meanwhile, can be whacked up to 60 FPS without any obvious hit to performance. Our Geekbench 4 benchmarks followed closely in line with what we experienced on the One Vision. Given the nigh on identical hardware involved, that's to be expected. An average multi-core score of 5,369 is really strong, comfortably trumping the Moto G7 Plus 4,877 and more or less matching the Honor 20 Lite's 5,404. We partially attributed the fluid experience of using the Motorola One Action to Android One, but this rock-solid hardware is another part of the equation. We didn't experience any stutters or halts during general navigation, while the gestural camera shortcut boots up quite quickly, if not instantaneously. The Motorola One Action is another fine budget smartphone from Motorola. It continues the good work started with the Motorola One Vision, but with a couple of interesting twists. Ditching the Vision's decent camera for a dedicated ultra-wide video lens gives anyone more interested in shooting stable footage a genuine choice. Being able to shoot that video in portrait mode makes the process more comfortable and intuitive, too. Add the fact that the Motorola One Action is slightly cheaper than its close brother, yet packs the same potent processor, bright display and appealing design, with one or two minor cutbacks, and you have a very tempting new option in the busy $250 per 200 pounds category.